Well, hey friends and neighbors, this is Chuck out at Sheraton Park Farms. Welcome back to the farm. So today we're going to keep talking a little bit about getting started with pasture pigs and some things that you can do to make your pasture pig operation a little more easier to manage. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about how we set our paddocks up, what's included in the paddock, and how we design that. And we're also going to be talking a little bit about these physical gates and how do we implement a physical gate and the physical barrier as part of the electric fence and our psychological barrier, and use both of those together to be able to manage the pigs a little bit better. And how can this, the physical gate, help us with the move whenever we're ready to go to the next spot? So hang around, let's talk about it, and let's learn a little bit more about pasture pigs. Stick with us. So over the course of the past couple weeks to month or so, we've posted a couple of videos talking about how to get started with pasture pigs. We've done a video on exactly what it costs to get started with pigs. We talked about how to go back and select your pigs, how to pick out your piglets. And then we also done a video talking about how to train pastured pigs onto electric fence, like what we've got here. So whenever we're setting up our paddocks, a couple things that we always make sure that we've got, in addition to our electric fence, is we make sure that we've got a feeder. Again, I think we've showed this on a couple other videos. This is one of our portable feeders that we use. It holds about 750 pounds of feed. Round style feeder. Lid comes up. We put the feed in here. This thing's got about, I think 7 or 8 doors along the bottom. Pigs come along, flip the door up, feed falls down. We can control the rate of feed that's coming down in this simply by turning the crank that cams up and down a mechanism that allows the feed to flow out. So we can control the amount of feed that's coming out of this at a time. But always make sure we got our feed in here. And what we found is whenever we move pigs onto a brand new paddock like we have these guys, the feed consumption goes down for a while. While they've still got plenty to root around and eat and forage for out here in the pasture, they don't hit this feeder nearly as often. So another reason to keep those pigs moving, it can help reduce your feed costs. Third thing that we make sure that we've got in place is a water system for the pigs. Now, this is probably not the best water system that you can utilize. I know there's a lot of different things out there on the market, but two things. Number one, it's cheap, and number two, it works for us. This is just a 50-gallon pickle barrel. We pick these up locally for about 20 bucks a piece, and then we buy the pig nipples that you can get at the feed store. Put 2 of those in there with a bulkhead on the back, and these work really good. This is probably the third year. This is the third year that this one's been in service. Every once in a while we'll have to repair a nipple or something like that, but these things work great. We fill them up about once a day, depending on how many pigs are in a paddock. We got 9 pigs in this paddock right now, so we're filling this thing up about once a day. We had a heck of a rainstorm last night, so filled it up yesterday afternoon, and it's still 3/4. You will from time to time get a rogue pig that likes to knock this thing over. And again, these guys, whenever you move to a new spot, I think they take turns of holding that nipple open and creating a mud hole right beside the water. But for the most part, super portable, easy to move, cheap, and gets the job done. So those are the things that we're really looking for whenever we're deciding on infrastructure and what we need to put the pigs out to pasture. So those are the 3 major items that we make sure that we've got set up in a paddock whenever we're moving pigs around on pasture. We got the fence, we got that physical and that psychological barrier set up, and again we're going to talk about the gates here in just a minute. We got feed and we got water. Now, a big question that I've been seeing on social media lately is, what about housing? We've been doing this is our 3rd year for pasture pigs. We have never, outside of fairing huts for our pregnant gilts, we have never provided a hard structure shelter for these pigs. And they do fine. We're in central North Carolina, zone 7A, I think it's 7A. And even in the wintertime, whenever it gets cold, we've had pigs out on pasture, they do fine in the cold weather. These pigs will just pile up on one another, and they use their own body heat for warmth. We've had pigs out in driving rain, we've had pigs out in snow, and they do fine. I mean, they're pigs. This is not they're not your family pet, they're not your dog. Probably get some blowback for that, but these are livestock animals. They are designed to be outside in the elements and to weather those elements. What we found here in the rain, these pigs will come back here in the woods and they'll find a place and they'll all hunker down and they'll just cover each other up and lay in a pile, and they do fine. Same thing in the cold. Summertime, we do make sure that we got plenty of shade for them in the summertime so that they can get in out of the sun, and then they're going to make wallows and dig in the ground and roll in the mud and all that kind of thing so that they can cool themselves off. But again, we don't provide a how you doing? We don't provide a specific shelter for the pigs. So let's talk a little bit about fencing specifically. So what we've converted to using 2 strands of polywire as our electric fence to keep our pigs in. Now, as most of you know, electric fencing is primarily a psychological barrier. We trained these piglets early on to respect this electric fence, and I'll post a video up above right now about our training process and how we train pigs on electric fence. But again, we use 2 strands of electric wire. It's just a simple poly braid. I think this is a Gallagher brand, and I'll post a link to the fencing that we use in the description down below. But this is just a roll of Gallagher wire. We put them on these spools. This is one of those fancy geared spools. I've got some that are not so fancy, but this is just one we had. And we run 2 strands. Now, part of the trick on moving pastured pigs is, like a lot of other things, begin with the end in mind. When the pigs are done in this area after a couple of weeks, depending on how many pigs are here, how big the area is, when these pigs are done in this area, we want to think about where they're going to next. And that's where these physical gates can come into play. If you've been around pastured pigs, or you've been around pigs for very long, you've discovered that if I were to take this wire down now, or if I were to turn the spark off, the pigs are not going to cross that. They've learned and they know that that wire is something that they don't want to touch. They've had a bad experience with it. So if we were to take that wire down, it's going to take a whole lot of coaxing to get that pig to walk from right here 3 feet forward and cross where that wire was, even though it's not there, because again, they're trained to not go past that spot. So that's where these gates come into place. So what we do with the gates is we put the gate at the beginning of the next spot where we want to go. So for example, if I wanted to move these pigs that way, what we would do when we're ready to move is set up our paddock, and then we would just simply open this gate and move them forward into the next area where they're going, close the gate behind them. Because it's a physical barrier. They've learned that this is in their way. There's nothing here on this gate that's going to shock them or hurt them, but it's in their way. So if we remove that physical barrier, the pigs will move forward. So let's walk down the hill. We're going to take a look at the other gate, and that's the gate from where they're getting ready to move to from here to the next spot. Let's go look at it. So this is our second gate. This is the gate. I'm about 60 yards down the hill from the other gate. So this is the other gate. This is the back gate. So this is where, whenever we're ready to move the pigs, they're going to come through this. We're going to open this gate up, and they're just going to walk right into the next area. We'll coax them through with maybe some scraps, a little bit of feed, some treats or something like that. But we're going to move them through. Now, an interesting thing about this, a situation that this creates, is whenever you put 2 gates up, you're going to have 2 separate strands of fence. Those 2 separate strands of fence are going to be on each side of the gate. So we're going to run a strand of fence along one half, beginning at the front side of a gate and ending at the front side of the gate. And then we're going to run the second strand, beginning at the back side of the gate, ending at the back side of the gate. So let's go back up the hill again. We'll take a look at the 2 reels, and we'll tell you how we get past the Energizer question and how we energize both sides of that fence. All right, so what happens with our fence? This is how we set up 2 strands of fence, or it could be 1 strand of fence, however you want to do it. But this is how we set up 2 strands. So we take a reel of wire and we tie it into an insulator on this T-post. Now we always use T-posts wherever we're turning a corner, we've got a tight angle, because that's where you're going to get the most tension on your wire, and it's going to pull it's going to pull on your post, so you need something pretty steady. So we start a roll of wire right here on the top, on that top insulator. So let's walk around and show you what I'm talking about. There's a T-post on the corner. Then we use these white step-in posts intermittently between T-posts just to keep the wire up off the ground. Incidentally, these are tighteners. I'll post a link to these in the description down below as well. But these are super simple, work great to pull tension in your wire. So if you've got a saggy wire, great way to pull tension in it, not have to reset a bunch of posts. So that strand of wire starts at the top, goes all the way around, comes to here, side of the gate, circles around the bottom, and then it goes all the way back. And that is one single strand of wire. So on the other side of the gate, we do the exact same thing. We start the roll of twine, or the roll of poly wire at the bottom. We go all the way down and around to the other side of the other gate, loop it around, and then come back and end right here. So that's how we run 2 strands of wire with 2 gates. Then for an Energizer, we're using a SpeedRite 2000, and that's plugged into a car battery. We keep a couple of car batteries around and keep a charger, and we just trade these out. Whenever a battery goes dead, we just take and trade it out with the one on the charger and replace it. So SpeedRite 2000, we got a couple of these. These things have been just phenomenal. They work great. We keep them in these just plastic tubs. You can pick them up at any big box store. They work out great. Put the battery and the Energizer down in there, put a lid on it, stays watertight, works great. So those are the Energizers we use. And again, I'll post a link to that one down in the description below as well. So if you're just starting out farming, you're probably asking yourself, if I've got 2 separate wires, 2 separate places, and I've only got one Energizer, how do I energize the other half? How do I skip over where the gate is? And I had wondered that thing myself and thought and just could not figure it out. I thought, well, the only way to really get around a gate is you're probably just going to have to dig a trench, bury a wire in some conduit or something so that you can get past that gate. Until I watched a video, I think Justin Rhodes done the video. It was on how Joel Salatin raises his pigs and moves his pigs. And they talked about a jumper wire. And I thought, how do you make a jumper wire? And the answer is so simple. I feel kind of stupid for not thinking about it, but that's how you learn. So what we do is we take an old piece of extension cord. And this is just an old extension cord. I think the end was broken out of it or messed up or something. So I kept it. So you take an old extension cord and you cut it to length. And we cut ours, a good 10 feet, 11 feet, something like that. Make it nice and long. It doesn't hurt to have extra. And then peel that back and select a wire. Doesn't matter whether it's the black wire, the red wire, whatever color wire you want to use. Just pick one. Just make sure you use the same one on both sides. So we take this end, and we peel the black wire back and expose the wire to it. And then we connect it to one of these connective gate handles. And you can pick these up at any feed store, Tractor Supply, Rural King, wherever you buy your outdoor farming stuff at. They've usually got these things, a couple bucks a piece. We take that black wire and we connect it to the end of this connective gate handle. And then we tape it together. Then we take the black wire on the other end with another connective gate handle, and we connect the black wire to the end of it. And then you got a jumper. And this is how simple it is to chase your electric from one side of your gate to the other side of your gate. You just hook it in. You hook it here. And then we hook it over there. And now you've got your hot wire running both sides of your fence. So again, this is just a really simple trick that I never would have thought of, and picked it up from watching one of Joel's videos. You know, if you've got some tips or tricks on things that you've learned that work really well with electric fence, or shortcuts or ways to be more effective with it, leave a comment down below. We'd love to hear about other ways to be effective with your electric fence. Wish somebody had told me about an extension cord a long time ago. It's a great idea. So the last thing I think I want to talk about is paddock size. And this really depends on your farm, your property, and the amount of pigs that you've got. We kind of select size of paddock based on the natural contour of the property, where we need the pigs at that time, and how many pigs we've got. Again, in here we've got, there are 9 pigs. They're probably on maybe 3/4 of an acre, maybe an acre here. And for us, it really just is kind of watching the pigs and how quickly they disturb the earth, and how much they stir stuff up. Also, we kind of rate based on their feed consumption. Whenever their feed consumption really starts going up, and that's something you've got to kind of judge based on the growth of the pigs at the time too. But when that feed consumption really starts going up, and it looks like they've lost or they've used up what they can forage for on the paddock that they're in, then it's time to move. So, some people use a certain amount of days. Some people use a feed amount as a constant, which is, the feed amount as a constant is probably as good a gauge as anything. But we're still kind of trying to figure all that out and figure out what works on our farm. So again, it's just, it's deciding how much space you've got, the natural contour of the land, what you have equipment to fence them in with. I showed you a couple of reels that we've got. I've got 4 or 5 more of those reels back at the barn, so it's real easy to set up the next paddock and get them moved. So a couple different factors come into play whenever we're deciding how big of a paddock to put these pigs on, and how long to leave them there. So we've talked a lot about folks getting into raising their own food and raising animals on your property so that you can feed your family and have a good source of food. And again, I think pigs are a great way to start. Pigs are really pretty easy keepers once you get them trained on this electric and get them trained to stay where you want them to stay. The feed process can be simple, the water process is simple, and pigs are really great for property. I mean, they do a good job of stirring up that latent seed bank, clearing out some of your underbrush, and really doing a lot of good work on your property. So, if you're interested in raising pigs, I would strongly encourage you to do it. Pigs are just great animals. We're glad to help. If you've got questions, please reach out to me. I'm glad to try to answer what I can. Certainly not an expert, but we've got a couple of years of experience now. And if nothing else, I'm glad to tell you what won't work. Lord knows we've sure figured out what don't work in this deal. So, and learning more every day. So I'm gonna post a couple playlists over here on Pasture Pigs and what we're doing with Pasture Pigs, and maybe there's some videos in there that you'd find helpful, that might be helpful for you in getting started with Pasture Pigs. So appreciate you watching. Please give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks.